Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. The investigation just gets stranger and stranger, even to me. This is going to be series number 88. And again, seems that snakes are involved. The occult and the Third Reich. See the SWAT sticker and the snakes? This book reveals how strange and mystical cults, I'm reading the back of the book, influenced Adolf Hitler, and how the National Socialist movement was linked to and sprang from the ancient Catharist tradition. As Hitler himself said 30 years ago, "He who has seen in National Socialism only a political movement has seen nothing." So think about that. World War II, Hitler. World War I, the deception, the agreement. So what was the deception? World War I, Germany was winning the war. World War I, prior to World War I, and probably during World War I, the Jewish people were suffering largely in Russia. And they were fleeing for their lives and found safe haven in Germany. And then the treacherous act. The elite Jewish banksters, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgan, Schiffs, i.e. the Illuminati, another cult. Make no mistake. It's just another cult, like the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Kabbalah people, the people into witchcraft, the Zionists, the Jesuits, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, and so many more. The Rainbow Coalition, the New Age, the Gay Agenda, organized and orchestrated by cults, vying for a new world order. Maybe, possibly, a return to the old order, the return to the golden age. But what does all that mean to we the people, like me, probably people watching this video? We don't have a clue. What the heck is going on? What's up? Why are they trying to destroy Christianity? Force transgenderism on us all with legislation, battles in court, so that I guess men, if they feel like it, can go into a girl's bathroom, etc. Will it lead? Is it already leading? Has it already led to public approval of pansexualism? Having sex with anybody, anything? Bisexuality? Adultery? Bestiality? Pedophilia? Orgies? It's part of the satanic cult. According to Rabbi Marvin Antelman, in his book, To Eliminate the Opate, and the opate means your belief in God. So it appears they fear you or I, we the people, believing in God and using our subconscious or our mind or our voice and prayer to apparently the place where our spirits came from. An otherworldly realm, the spiritual realm. Because as anybody knows, life on earth is temporary. For me, for you watching this video, for those trees, the grass. It's all temporary. Everything erodes, everything dies. Spiritual realm is that apparently God, the entities, angels, so there's more than one in God's realm. A third of the angels were cast out because of some great conflict in the heavenly realm. So they created all this that we who are alive get to enjoy and live through if certain peoples would only leave us alone. So I found this book fascinating. The Occult and the Third Reich by Jean Mitchell Algebert. It was written in French by a French author, as you can see on the bottom, the name, and translated into English. Fascinating book. The story is unbelievable, possibly, but apparently true. We've seen the Indiana Jones movies. The mystical origins of Nazism and the search for the Holy Grail. You know, we know right now that with the overthrow of all the countries in the Middle East, where all the ancient monuments are, and undiscovered, so they say, artifacts all over the Middle East, in Syria, Egypt, Iraq, all those countries, Afghanistan. The land of the beginning of humankind, possibly. All the myths seem to originate there. And we know right now that the archaeological digs are going on. They're searching for something. It's in the newspaper all the time. They find this, they find that. And they overthrew all the countries using 9/11 as the excuse, another Pearl Harbor, which they said they needed to bring about the New World Order, and gave them the excuse and the people's approval to overthrow all those countries and mass murder millions of people. Take their land, their resources, their oil, their minerals, etc., etc., etc. And we, the people here in the United States, and probably in Canada, Europe, wherever, South America, Asia, other parts of the world, we're all befuddled. We don't know what to think. So anyways, for example, I read books and I investigate and I allow a little bit of knowledge to come to me at a time. Not trying to hurry it. Sometimes you just get something interesting. The Satanic Quest, Chapter 1. The Seeker, the Grail, Myth or Reality, the Cather Phenomenon. Chapter 2, the Book of the Key, the Mysterious Mission. Chapter 3, Atlantis and Hyperborea, the Theories Concerning the Creation of the World. And a couple more pages of chapters. I'll just leave it up here for you to look at. And get busy reading this. The Translator's Preface. If the list continues to grow, it is because civilized men are not satisfied with the interpretations offered to date to explain the National Socialist phenomenon, which remains the enigma of our times, in the wake of World War II, as the mind-boggling horrors of the concentration camps shocked the European conscience. Some men of thought and action all but rejected 2,000 years of Christianity and turned to existentialism. So that was a profound impact after World War II of the shocking horrors, and a lot of people turned away from Christianity to existentialism. A lot of changes took place. The public, again, as I keep saying, was deceived from my research, and is being led down a path towards the New Age and the New World Order right now. I don't think too many people will dispute that. It sees Nazism as the only most recent manifestation of a militant neo-paganism locked in a death struggle with its arch-enemy, traditional Christianity. So I can say, with this cosmology religion of the cosmos, the sun, the stars, the planets, is the new paganism. Remember, these suns are supposed to be deities. Planets are supposed to be gods and deities. So it is a neo-paganism, which is basically the old paganism, locked in a death struggle with its arch-enemy, traditional Christianity. A struggle which will go on until the end of time. Its most recent roots go back to the Middle Ages, where the neo-Gnostics heresies, particularly Carthurism, forcefully challenged the church's spiritual authority everywhere in Europe, particularly in the south of France and in the Rhinish provinces of Germany. The authors show that the driving force behind this neo-paganism emanates from a remote moment of a distant past, from the tradition of Atlantis and of Thule, Thule, Hyperborea, whose myths of gods walking among men, myths preserved in the Celtic, Scandinavian, and Germanic mythologies, transmitted by an elitist hierarchy of the initiate, never diminished. In this cosmology, here we got that word cosmology, the key word is Gnostic, integral, absolute, ultimate knowledge, transmitted to men by the gods through the ancient runic writings and exemplified in the symbolism of the pagan Aryan Grail. In the mind of the church, nothing could be further removed from the faith and ethics of traditional Christianity than the Gnostic doctrines promulgated by the racists Zoroaster and Mani. These were prophets. Zoroaster, I think, is a religion over there in Iran, Persia, with their emphasis on an elite's attainment of primordial knowledge. We just went over that book where the Rosicrucian, the techniques of the teacher to initiate students to suppress their personality, their whole reality, and open their mind, empty their mind so they can open their mind to some other entities to enter and work through them. Hence, we're also reminded here of primordial knowledge and their belief in the two worlds, one created by the good God and the other by the bad God. And of course, in the Christian religion, in the Bible, a third of the angels were cast from heaven. And apparently we do have a cosmic struggle going on. How does that affect us? And what does that propose to be for our future? What do they plan to do to us? Whose side am I on? Whose side are you on? The titanic struggle for men's minds is exemplified in the dual symbolism attendant upon the Grail and its quest, with the French and German troubadours of the 12th and 13th centuries celebrated in stories of the Knights of the Round Table. So they had these men called troubadours running around singing poetry, stories of history in the ancients. Troubadours. To the ancient Aryan peoples, the Grail was the stone bearing the sacred inscriptions of primordial knowledge given by the gods to the initiate. So they're seeking some ancient knowledge. Again, what's that got to do with we the people today? And I hate to tell you, but apparently everything, including the sky sprang, harp systems, economic propaganda of crashing the dollar, crashing the stock market, black op projects with the military and secret services, working to construct more sinister plagues and viruses, miniature electronics to mind control people, chip everything, monitor everybody, cashless society. And they use terrorism and all these other scares, volcanoes going off, Yellowstone going off, pole shifting, Planet X, Nibiru, the Destroyer, etc., etc., etc. Droughts, unsustainability, biodiversity. Moving on here. The medieval church, scarcely oblivious to the challenge posed by the elitist doctrine, embroidered in the symbols, sought to transform it into a symbol of faith in a universal salvation represented by the precious blood which had been shed for all mankind. So they're talking about Jesus. This emphasis on ultimate faith rather than ultimate knowledge was only partly successful, as subsequent events were to prove. So the Catholic Church wants everybody to have ultimate faith, and these initiated people who have all these cults all over the world, from the Illuminati to the Zionists to the Kabbalah people, Rosicrucian, Knights of Columbus, Knights of Malta, Club of Rome, Bohemian Grove, Bilderberger groups, all these endless list of organizations are seeking some primordial knowledge, ultimate knowledge. They don't want ultimate faith. But of course they don't want to share this ultimate knowledge with we the people, who they call cattle, goyim, profane, and animals not to be trusted, like H.G. Wells said. These elitists want to be the aristocrats, the kings and queens, the dukes, the princes, the ones living in mansions and castles and ruling over the rest of us. However they see fit, because, remember, they think we're animals. And they slaughter animals. That's why the slaughtering all over the world has been going on and is going on. And apparently, a big event is coming that is planned. The authors bring brilliant insight into our understanding of the battle of the symbols. They show how the Nazi high priesthood, Sobendorf, Rosenberg, Feder, Hess, Himmler, Hitler, long steeped in the esotericism, practiced as an instrument of the neo-pagan faith, sent the brilliant young medievalist, scholar, and USS officer, Otto Rahn, to the ancient Cathar lands in the south of France in search of the unholy grail for the Aryans. The unholy grail. What he found near the last bastion of the Cathars, the Sun Temple fortress of Montségur, identified by Ram as the legendary Montselvet, where the Grail had been kept, and what subsequently was brought back to Germany, shaped the mind of the Third Reich from that point forth. The significance of these findings is that there is thus as much reason to speak of a neo-pagan continuum, or tradition in the West, as of a Judeo-Christian one. The first, like the second, has its dogma, rituals, symbols, prophets, and adepts. So apparently this neo-pagan religion like the Christian Jewish religion, has its own dogma, the rules and laws and stories, ritual, symbols, prophets, and adepts. So for an easier way to say it, the Satanists and the Luciferians have their own dogma, rituals, symbols, prophets, and adepts. Christianity has its dogma, the rules and all that, and stories, rituals, symbols, and prophets, and adepts. As in all major religions, it is through the priesthood, as exemplified in the Nazi strain by the esoteric Vril Society, Thule Society, Society of the Seekers of the Grail, and seminaries on the Ordenbergen, that it perpetuates itself by means of a concentration of occult powers located in the initiatory centers whose knowledge and symbols are as inaccessible to the masses. It governs as to the enemy. So they want to keep all this knowledge from the enemy and keep all this knowledge from we, the people, the citizens. And apparently, like in the United States and much of the world, with the FEMA camps and the government buying 450 hollow point bullets and Jade Helm and all kinds of software programs to monitor everybody and select targets and execute the targets all by computer for some future event when they do the eventual worldwide revolution or the apocalypse or whatever they call it, World War III. So the people will be the enemy also. Is the assessment of the demonical side of German National Socialism. Was Hitler the devil? Just reading my highlighted sentences. The most recent resurgence of neo-paganism, Hitler actualized and articulated in its most extreme and perverted form, a Gnostic racism that had existed everywhere in Europe, including Germany, centuries before his phenomenal rise to power. Its vitality has in no way been diminished by his death. And as we read in my recent number 87 video about the techniques of the teacher to train the initiates, aspirant, everything is kept from the people. But when they did train these initiates and aspirants to rid themselves of their impersonality, of any hopes or dreams or aspirations to this material world or realm, and dedicate their souls and their bodies to the work of the masters, bring some other entities into them to work through them. And from my investigation, apparently Hitler was one of those people who accomplished that task. And a lot of people say he would switch from one type of egocentric man into another man after the event, which, by the way, in the other book I have, Satanism in Hollywood, a lot of the stars, movie stars, famous people who consult psychics and study the Kabbalah and all this other occult stuff, apparently when they go into some of their acting situations, they call upon some entity that would fit that part exactly, and they transform themselves into this other person. And then after the part is played, that entity withdraws, and they go into a slump or a very fatigued and tired look when that entity leaves them. So apparently that's what's going on also with politicians we have running our world right now. Just a food for thought. Are these people calling upon demonic entities, other kinds of entities, creatures, whatever, And when these entities do take over, these people desiring wealth, power, riches, sex, and all that, is this where you get people like Hitler and presidents that we have now and we've had recently who seem to metamorphosize into other entities? And I noticed that about George Bush Jr. a lot. And some people say they've got pictures on the internet of George Bush Sr. with the reptilian eyes. And then we remember the story about Arizona Wilder with David Icke talking about these Illuminati satanic rituals where these people do metamorphosize back into reptilian creatures. And the leader of such creatures in these satanic rituals where they abduct people, kill them, drink their blood, eat their flesh, the leader's called a Pindar. Just throwing in the stuff I learned, see how it fits this stuff. So Hitler's death did not diminish his power or with the goals of the Third Reich, which apparently a lot of people say just moved into control of the USA and the world. The unparalleled evil incarnated in this particular Antichrist, Hitler's life and death appear to be one episode of the continuing struggle between neo-paganism and Christianity. The Nazi cosmology was an intricate synthesis of the historic, philosophic, religious, social, and occult, nurtured by an ancient neo-paganism whose profile is accurately revealed for the first time in the Cathar heresy of the Middle Ages. So this stuff's been going on a long time. The ability of neo-paganism to reaffirm itself militarily and contest with Christianity for men's minds and bodies tells us that the Nazi nightmare is the most recent, but not the final act in a larger human tragedy that is still being played out. Oh my. It would be foolish to see this phenomenon as a specifically German problem. How unbelievably shallow-rooted the Christian faith and ethic was amply demonstrated by the unparalleled recrudescence of neo-paganism everywhere the SWAT sticker went. The rise of occultism, we got that going on all over the world now. Church of Satan is the fastest growing church, I think. And the practice of the black arts by the Madrid secret societies, particularly the kind represented by Satanism. That's what it says here. And this book was written, by the way, 1971. So this stuff didn't begin yesterday. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and further. By Manson-type families, and by the epidemic of occult-inspired political assassinations, should cause civilized men the gravest concern. That's what I keep saying. All that's been going on and all that's planned, I'll requote this my way, should cause civilized men and women the gravest concern. The authors are doubtless right in their predicting that certain practitioners of the black arts will yet play a major role in determining the shape of a not too distant future. Alright, so that was the preface. Now let's go to the introduction. The acceleration of history, with its assault upon our senses, overwhelms us. So you take somebody like me, an older guy, who was in the Army 3 years, couple college degrees, using the GI Bill, and worked at a major aerospace company 10 years. Been in business for myself 25 years. And I've seen some interesting things, so I'll restate this sentence. The acceleration of history, with its assault upon our senses, overwhelms us. And it's prompted me, as I've said in my videos, 2005, many of my clients' financial statements were plummeting. And I pay attention to the news, and people are losing their homes in Argentina, Germany, Canada, United States, East Coast, West Coast. So economic destruction everywhere. And if you look up on the internet, Alan Greenspan testifies before Congress that they were running a program called economic destruction. Please look it up. And if you find that it's true, which you will, shouldn't that concern you and me to know that they do plan on putting the final nail in the coffin of the United States, causing some kind of economic destruction, which they will create. They want us to all believe it's just a coincidence, because we're such bad citizens, we've got to be microchipped and enslaved. When all along throughout history, they've been calling us profane, goyim, animals, and animals not to be trusted. Cattle. All right, moving on with this book. The Crusade Against the Grail by Otto Rahm was the point of departure into the secret origins of the Hitlerian cosmology. Lucifer's Court in Europe, by the same author, confirmed our first hypothesis. There was indeed a link between National Socialism and the quest for the Grail of the Cathars. So this same author, Otto Rahm, who this author is talking about, also wrote a book called Lucifer's Court in Europe. Suppose I'll have to get that book. It turned out to be something which we urgently feel should be brought to the attention of the general public. That's what this author says. The historian must not run away from danger, whatever the source, but rather do what he can to shed light on the dark pages of the past. And a lot of people ask me, Rick, why do you bother with this stuff? You're supposed to just have joy. Think positive thoughts. And that's part of the propaganda that's been taught to everybody. I've seen it over and over and over and over, even postings on telephone poles in downtown where I live. Don't delay joy. And so many other little short sentences. They're programming people. What the people don't understand is they're spiritual beings, and they need to choose which spiritual road they're going to go down on. The one where Aleister Crowley says in the Book of the Law, do as thou wilt, who helped start the Church of Satan and part of the Rosicrucians, the Order of the OTD. I'll get to that. And Helena Blavatsky's book of the Secret Doctrine. And Albert Pike, the leader of the Freemasons for the southern jurisdiction of the United States, and a general for the South in the war between the states. And he wrote the book Morals and Dogma, where he got his information from a master interdimensional. So did Aleister Crowley. So did Helena Blavatsky. Teachings of the Rosicrucians mean you have to surrender your own will to some other will called the self. Those who induced Germany to embrace the swastika are not dead. They are still among us, just as they have been in every era, doubtless will continue to be until the apocalypse. National Socialism was for them but a means, and Hitler was but an instrument. I believe that's absolutely true, just as the Bushes, Clinton, Obama, and all the presidents we've had were just instruments. And they did what they were told. Woodrow Wilson did some terrible things. John Kennedy tried to tell us, he said their secret establishment was controlling things, and it was repugnant to we the people in the United States, and he was going to expose it with his term in office, but we know what happened to him. Moving on. This makes one recall the Golden Red Cross, an esoteric movement which had taken root in Germany, Golden Red Cross, in the Low Country, and has for a long time planted, markers at Monsignor. Strange symbol fastened to the rough exterior. It was a pentagram of stone, wrong way up, with its point down. If you go look up Satan or the devil, you'll see that's what it looks like, an upside down star, and you'll see the devil's face in it. I've showed it before. So look up Satan or the devil, Bafflant, Baal, and images, any one of those, on Yahoo search, and you'll see a Yahoo image website, and you'll see a pentagram, upside down star, with an image of the devil in it. We were informed later that it was a symbol of black magic. And somebody had attached it to the building with setting cement by some members of one of those mysterious groups who still prowl around the castle. Members of the group were called the Werewolves, the Red Knights, and an underground branch of the famous Society of the Seekers of the Grail. Made up of men of all ages, but with a majority of young, these groups have paramilitary appearance, bearing banners and standards and wearing parts of uniforms, berets and special neckerchiefs, insignia, and they have structured by ranks. So they do have these organizations everywhere, and we know that they use all the Masonic lodges for getting things done, whether it be parades or events in town or protest or whatever the master tells the members of the Freemason Lodge. Remember, they swear under threat of death not to divulge the goings-on and secrets, and to obey the master. So as these young men or old men belonging to these lodges may rightly be just decent citizens, some of the things they do may not have a benevolent intent, and they don't even know it, which is the case what a lot of people are doing and believing. They don't know they're being deceived and beguiled and lied to. And they quote things that they've been told, which is a big lie. They draw symbols clearly associated with black magic, a snarling panther's head, an eagle's claw, etc. And if you look at people with all their tattoos these days, they're putting it on their bodies. We have conquered and pillaged the fortress of Monsignor. That's one of the boasts that these groups claim. The purpose of this book is to raise the veil of history and to reveal some of the great currents running through it. Secret underground currents, to be sure, but very real and exceedingly powerful, particularly when they are manipulated by men imbued with the fanatical belief in their mission. Those who seek to penetrate these mysteries are immediately branded as sensationalist. I'm reading a 1971 book, and I'm sharing, and I've read a lot of other books, and I've shared them, and I just find it hard to believe, and nobody's going to convince me, that all those authors and all those books are just figments of my imagination. And all of it's false information. Even though a lot of those authors and people were persecuted, prosecuted, even assassinated, imprisoned. So we know that the people in powerful places don't want this information out. The reader is tired of lies and pseudo-historic frauds. To him we offer our work in good faith. These French authors said that. So Otto Rahn and the Crusade Against the Grail is where we start. So I'm going to read and tell my story, try to explain it, and a manner where I consider myself as we the people, an average citizen, not part of the elitist group, and have taken it upon myself to investigate WTH is going on. What is going on? Let's see if we can get it. The Grail, Christian relic and pagan relic. The Satanic Quest. You can't make this up. This book's falling apart. That's how old it is. I don't trust the new books. Berlin, April 30th, 1945. The Chancellery Gardens are like a moonscape. The city has become a Sodom and Gomorrah of the 20th century. So that would be at the end of World War II. So Berlin was destroyed like Sodom and Gomorrah. What indeed was this new conception of the world? This Weltanschauung, which National Socialist Germany dreamed of extending to the whole world. And how many people now are looking at this new age and this new world order as a world-like socialist thing, and they will swear that it is the right thing to do and that capitalism is evil. Remember, that was Germany, National Socialism, and now they want a worldwide socialism. And I'm here to tell anybody who thinks that's going to be the case, that the power elites, when they get this worldwide revolution, that they cause because they bring everybody to their knees in suffering. So that's why they have to destroy and take everything down, and everybody running out of money, and everybody economically in despair. Well, however, whatever event they use to cause that, then the people will take the carrot, the New World Order. They'll be promised a monthly check, a weekly check, if they get the microchip. Then that will be the beginning of the end. Because think about it. These people haven't accomplished all the murder and mayhem that they have to turn around after the fact when they create the New World Order to be benevolent, nice guys concerning themselves with creating a wonderful world for we cattle and animals. Just saying. Don't be beguiled. Don't be fooled. They deceive. The devil deceives. That's his business. The devil doesn't have a moment of relapse and start running around with concern and love for people. Think about it. But people can't grasp the problem. We still do not know on what foundation the Nazi view of man was based. Nazi view of man. At best, it was thought that the answer might lie in a certain lodge of the Vril, V-R-I-L, an offshoot of the Rosicrucians. There you go. And the personality of Karl Harshofer. And I've gone over this book. Different writers have long been working along them. Louis Parwells and Jacques Bergier, in their well-known work, The Morning of the Magicians. I've discussed that book. And they detail a lot of these magical documented events. Even maybe a whale showing up on a farm field in Nebraska. How did that happen? I have my theories. If you want to call it magic, or you want to call it some kind of vortex created by a lightning bolt, maybe in the ocean. And it created a specific vortex in the water with the lightning bolt that a whale just happened to be in, and it created a tear in the fabric of space and teleported the whale to the field in Nebraska. And there are many instances of these kinds of activities, and I've gone over them. Everything from using dowsing rods to find water, to magic by magicians, to the police using psychics to find criminals and lost people, etc., etc. It's all there. There is more to reality than we all know. Even I, sitting here, if you've taken basic science in grade school, you've got to know that I'm just a mass of molecules and atoms all swirling around that make up this flesh and blood body. The same thing with the trees and the rocks. If you get one of those microscopes, electron microscopes, and you zoom in and you zoom in and you zoom in on my arms, you're going to see the molecules. And on my hair. So what kind of magic or electromagnetic force could dematerialize me or transfer me? And I'm going to go over more material about these sciences. And why are they putting heavy metals in the sky with sky spraying, which is geoengineering the planet and causing a lot of destruction. Building all those HAARP transmitters, H-A-A-R-P, microwave transmitters, like they put around the Philadelphia experiment on the ship, the Eldridge, which teleported itself to several places around the world, and when it reappeared at its dock, some of the human men were inside the steel, embedded in the steel bulkheads. Died a horrible death. And the ones who didn't get embedded in the steel, some of them burst into flames, spontaneous combustion. Some of them, right in front of their friends, just disappeared and walked through a wall, never to be seen again. So there's something to this interdimensional reality. And remember, Earth itself is a gigantic ball with an electromagnetic field and an electromagnetic shield around it. I guess it could be construed as a gigantic projector or something holding the whole puzzle together. This software program that runs our reality. Because remember, this isn't real, this is temporary. Spiritual realm seems to be what's forever, in my opinion. And the stuff I've been learning and reading. Moving on. When we stop to consider that Carthyism is the most recent and most perfected form of Manichaeism, apparently there was a prophet Mani, so that would be Manichaeism, we are not surprised at the relationship between Hitlerism, which is a striking manifestation of the new Gnostic, and the Cathar philosophy. Just noticed I was up to 47 minutes on that video, and I don't like to run them too long because sometimes they will get corrupted. They won't play, and then I've spent all that time doing all that reading, which is not easy, 47 minutes, and then I'll have to do it again. It's like writing a big paper on your Word software in your computer, and then something happens and the whole thing gets wiped out. Makes you a little upset. So when I saw 47 minutes when I was looking at my video here, I had to stop it and start a new one. And then when I make movies, I paste them all together. Alright, between Hitlerism, which is a striking manifestation of the new Gnostic and the Cathar philosophy, of the two worlds of light and darkness in conflict. In the Nazi cosmology, the sun played a prime role, as it did for the Cathars, as a sacred symbol for the Aryans, in contrast to the feminine and magical symbolism of the moon, revered by the Semitic peoples. This helps us understand the hate bordering on sheer madness which Hitler had for the Jews. In his dualistic outlook and faithful to the prophetic inspiration of the Mani, the Führer saw the Jewish people with their black hair and swarthy complexion, the dark side of the human species, while the blonde and blue-eyed Aryans constituted the light side of humanity. I'm not so sure that Hitler hated the Jews, other than the fact that during World War I, as I said earlier, the Jews were fleeing from Russia and found safe haven in Germany prior to World War I and during World War I. And I think that's probably one of the reasons for Germany's rise in power and industrialism and a worldwide economic situation prior to World War I. And it was growing quite well, which threatened England's empire, the German Empire. So that was the reason for World War I, was to stop Germany's rise in power. And I believe that Germany's rise in power did have something to do with the influences of all the Jews who were allowed to immigrate into Germany from Russia, where they were fleeing for their welfare in their lives. But during World War I, between Britain and Germany, because of this competition for empire building, Germany was winning the war with all its high-tech industrialism, and apparently some kind of cult information into technologies. But somebody in New York and other bankster people in Europe had a brilliant idea, so they thought, that England was losing the war, so they wanted to make a deal with England. And England was ready to surrender. And Germany was offering them very friendly terms: stop the war and let bygones be bygones and we'll forget everything. As simple as that, if you can believe it. So Germany was being very gracious about it. Its only crime is it was growing in its empire. And England, who had control of things like India and China, its empire was crumbling. So anyways, these elitist Jewish banksters, the Zionist people, who wanted to build their own homeland in Palestinians' territory, the Middle East, went to Mr. Balfour in England and said, hey, we'll turn the tide, don't surrender just yet. And we'll get you all the money you need, and we'll get the Americans in the war to fight for you. And these same Jewish people controlled Woodrow Wilson in the United States. So they conspired to get the Americans into the war, World War I. And the Jewish people in Germany weren't pleased with this themselves. They had found their paradise on earth, their homeland. They loved Germany. They were prospering. But the orders came from on high, the banksters, the Rothschilds, the Illuminati, one of these cults. So they had to do what they were told, and hence they sort of had to flee Germany for turning traitor on the country that had graciously accepted them from Russia. So the big betrayal. I've gone over this in a previous book. Look into it. So now we all know the story. Germany lost World War I because of that betrayal. So here you have the situation after World War I, and during the Versailles Treaty, where they put the burden of debt, they gave Germany a bill for the war that they had to pay, that was so high, so large, that it crippled the people and the country economically. Horrible. Anyways, during the Versailles Treaty, it came out in the hearings about the treacherous agreement, because now the Jews wanted the Palestinians' land because they had made a deal to betray Germany. The Balfour Agreement in England. So this is World War's over, and the people across Germany are now getting wind of the grand betrayal. And apparently, the German people did not rise up and riot and run around killing the Jewish people in Germany. But as a human, I'm sure, the unhappiness and hatred was festering as the economic situation continued to be intolerable after World War I. Years after years, and then 10 years later when Hitler gets to rise in power, I'm sure Hitler was aware of this treacherous act, and World War II was looming, And just like in the United States, where we put all the Japanese people into camps all over the USA during World War II, Germany had to put all the people he couldn't trust into camps, prison workplaces. So we did that in the United States with the Japanese people. So that's the story as best I know. And actually, these same banksters, this is how evil the whole story is, were the ones who propped up Hitler. These same Jewish people who betrayed Germany were the one who financed Hitler. So we can deduce that there is a much larger game afoot. All these people and situations were pawns in this game. We weren't really getting to the truth of what they're after. And I think it might be in some of it in this book. So the two worlds of light and darkness in conflict. In the Nazi cosmology, the sun played a prime role, as it did for the Cathars. And the sacred symbol for the Aryans, in contrast to the feminine and magical symbolism of the moon, revered by the Semitic peoples. This helps us understand the hate bordering on the sheer madness which Hitler had for the Jews. Remember, it was Jewish banksters who were financing Hitler. In his dualistic outlook and faithful to the prophetic inspiration of the Mani, that would be a prophet Mani, who was, I guess, a prophet for the pagan religion. The Führer saw in the Jewish people, with their black hair and swarthy complexion, the dark side of the human species, while the blonde and blue-eyed Aryans constituted the light side of humanity. Not so sure I actually believe all that. Again, I think there was a bigger, larger purpose. Hitler undertook to extirpate from the material world its impure elements, which had been introduced by the Jewish Satanism, that's what it says here, and by the Hebrew conspiracy. So with the Talmudic Jews abducting children for 2,000 years, getting caught many times and having hearings in courts and towns and people burned at the stake and killed for abducting young children and bleeding them, drinking the blood in a horrible fashion, causing as much pain as possible in some kind of satanic ritual. Not to be outdone by the Illuminati or the witchcraft people, abducting people and sacrificing them, the Mayans, and many other cults and tribes all over the world. So this is some kind of background spiritual ritual these people were practicing. And it just makes one wonder what kind of entities were behind all this, teaching natives like the Mayans to do that. Chopping off the head of a person at the top of the pyramid, the Mayan pyramid, rolling the head down the stairs and the body. Where did they get these teachings? Is there really some kind of satanic spiritual realm in combat with God's realm and angels? It appears likely. And by the Hebrew conspiracy and Jewish Satanism, to lead it back in glory on the triumphant road of its divine origin. This attempt, worthy of a Luciferian ego, is not, however, all that new. There has always been, in every age, madmen or prophets preaching a gospel of flagrant oppression to those religions revealed and preached to the masses by temporal authority. When a man, and we are mortal, thinks he alone holds truth and the key to all knowledge, he is ready to reduce the world to ashes, to impose his ideas. This is precisely what Hitler did, just as the Cathars, and before them the Manichaeans and the Gnostics. The world now saw the innocent and persecuted lamb turned into a devouring Moloch. That would be that god, gigantic one with a human in its hand eating, biting off the head, Moloch. Look it up. That owl in the Bohemian Grove that they throw a baby into a fire onto is Moloch. Look up Moloch in images. I've shown them in previous videos. Moloch. It can be a bull, it can be an owl. And the new prior of Ashtwich burned other heretics. The hour of the Gnostic triumph had not yet sounded, for two powers rose up against a common enemy. The Catholic Church, eternal enemy of the Gnostics, which it's pursued relentlessly in all its forms. So the Gnostics have all the knowledge, and the Catholic Church, that's their arch enemy, and the Catholic Church wants to destroy all the knowledge. So which is better here? The Catholic Church, who wants to keep the knowledge for itself and destroy it anywhere it finds it, or the Gnostics, who are all these cults who initiate new people into this knowledge and keep it from the public also. So whether you're talking about the Catholic Church and the Pope, or you're talking about these Illuminati occultic witchcraft types, they want to keep the knowledge from we the people. So in that end, both the Gnostics and the Church have a common purpose: to keep we the people ignorant and enslaved. The Jewish faith, which wants to use the mysteries of integral knowledge exclusively for its own enhancement. So even the Kabbalah, Jewish, Talmudic people want the knowledge for themselves. So it's an interesting perspective. So you've got the Jewish people with Zionism and Talmudic people thinking we're all goyim and cattle and we're only born to be their slaves. You've got the Illuminati and all those other lodges and Freemasons and Rosicrucians combating with them and the Pope to get the knowledge and find secret artifacts around the planet, see more knowledge, more power. And then you got the Vatican vying for its own power structure. And we the people, many people, are ignorant to the whole thing, not knowing who to blame, when maybe it's these three powers and maybe others, all competing for world domination. Well, maybe telling the truth here, the wind is kicking up. Is God saying, Rick, you've hit it on the head. Just being my silly self. The Cathars, philosophers, writers, and prophets had risen up against the conformity of their time long before, and they had tried to find once more within themselves the secrets of the universe and the primordial tradition. From the time of Zoroaster, the Persian prophet, who received his initiation from the solar verb himself, Ahura Mazda, down to Mani, another prophet, founder of a religion with awe-inspiring principles, but one in contradiction with the Christianity as taught by the Church. We encountered Gnosticism, a movement of such importance that it alone would justify our writing this book. Hope you're finding this stuff interesting. A philosophy which finds its place within Christianity while claiming to transcend it. Gnostics offer its believers a cosmology that is a conception and an explanation of the universe, material as well as spiritual. An outlook which was bound to attract large numbers of intellectual elite, unsatisfied by the apologetic commentaries of the Gospels. So these people organized together, shared the witchcraft or secret knowledge, and they control our reality, and they want to keep all this stuff from we profane people, uninitiated. This true doctrine, as revealed to an elite, was not to be spread among the common people. So again, I'll repeat. So we know that the Hebrews, with the Kabbalah, the Talmudic, the Zohar, and all their teachings, probably know all this stuff of this occult. Hence they have the Kabbalah and all the other things they do. And then, of course, the Freemasons, Rosicrucian, Illuminati, And all the other cults, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, the list is long, thousands of these cults around the world in different names, have the knowledge that they share under threat of death not to share with the public, and to obey the master to accomplish certain deeds and things going on in the planet. And then you have the Catholic Church itself, with all this knowledge it's accumulated over the thousands of years, mass murdered peoples and took all this sacred knowledge like they did in Mexico when the conquistadors marched into Mexico City and elsewhere. The first place they went was to the Shama's hut and get all the secrets and kill the Shama, and then proceed to take the people's gold and kill the people. So who are you going to trust? The Catholic Church, who are doing the same thing as the Illuminati and all the other Masonic cults, who are doing the same thing as the Kabbalist Zionist Jewish folks. So who's on top of this hill? Or are they all battling each other for the position on top of this hill? Or are they all in cahoots? Have they joined forces against we the people and decided to split up the planet into 10 different sections, which there are drawings of and stuff on the internet, which they will rule and pit each country against each other, i.e. get the people from one section to fight the people of another section. I think this is called feudalism, for their entertainment and profit. Seems like they've already been doing that. Catholic bishops relentlessly pursued the Manichaeans, who had to endure terrible persecutions. The heresy was finally stamped out while the Manichaeisms were extirpated in the 7th century Asia Minor. It found refuge in the heart of the Byzantine Empire among the Bulgarian communities, who, 3 centuries later, introduced it to Italy. From there it spread rapidly across medieval Europe into Germany, France, and Hungary. But it was in southern France that the provinces of Provence and Languedoc that the heresy was particularly well received. So this teaching was of obtaining the secret knowledge was opposite of what the Catholic Church, Rome, taught, or its philosophy, where they thought they were the only ones who should have the knowledge and nobody else should have it. And how much have we the people suffered because of this? And they don't want us to know any of this. The Cathars, meaning pure, whose own morals were exemplary, denounced the corruption and baseness of the clergy of the time. The clergy marred in the material wealth and already a prisoner of the prince of the world. So obviously the Catholic clergy, who were even accepting bribes, money, and then they would bless you and forgive you of your sins. Apparently they had gone over to the dark side and were already a prisoner of the prince of the world. That would be Lucifer. So the Cathars had the knowledge, so they became the arch enemy of the church. And I think a derivative of the Cathars would later on be the Illuminati, the Knights Templars, the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and all the other. Mystery School of Babylon. Babylon meaning the gateway to the gods. That's why they're overthrowing all those countries in the Middle East and digging like rats for some kind of artifacts, some secret knowledge for power and control. Hence they want the Grail. He who holds the Grail maybe has some kind of power from some type of demonic god or something. I'm just reading a book and sharing my thoughts. So anyways, the Cathars preached a more sophisticated doctrine drawn from the ancient books of the high priest, of the sun. All right, I'll reread that. So the Cathars preached a more sophisticated doctrine, drawn from the ancient books of the high priest and of the sun, and of all the great initiates, from the Pharaoh Akhenaten to the divine Plato, heired to the tradition of Atlantis. Thus the pentagon, Pythagorean symbol of the sun, was a sacred sign of the Cathars, which is why they built their temporal fortress Monsinger in this architectural form. All right, we shall take a closer look at the Cathar phenomenon later, but for now the important part is this. Massacred, tracked down, burned at the stake, the Albigensians, another name for the Cathars, were tortured in the name of the Roman Catholic Church and the Inquisition, yet the flame of the Albigensian spirit never died. The Templars, in the very bosom of Christianity, took up the torch. So now you have the Roman Catholic Church with its Templars taking up the torch of the Cathars. Remember, the Catholic Church turned on the Templars, the Knights Templar, and had a lot of them killed, crucified, and took all their wealth, tried to anyways. However, the secret books, scattered, lost, of which only fragments had survived, were now understood only partially, and Rosicrucianism, a sect born after the destruction of the Order of the Temple, transmitted only an adulterated doctrine which showed signs of a spiritual decadence and found its low point in Freemasonry, the shrunken shadow of a once pure esoteric doctrine. So Freemasonry is the low point. Apparently a little higher than that would be the Rosicrucian, which was a derivative of the Order of the Temple, the Knights Templars, and above them would be the Illuminati. So I've been saying all these things are part of the same. I got a spider here chasing me. All right, moving on. Hope you're finding this to be an interesting story. I'm only reading my highlighted portions. I'm only up to page 7. I read the first 50 pages of this book. All right, following the Protestant schism which split the Catholic Church in the 17th century, the Gnostic traditions became mixed with foreign elements. This accounts for the present confusion surrounding the various sects, each of which, since the Renaissance, lays claim to being the sole depository of truth through an unbroken affiliation with the esoteric tradition. Among these, one group stands out because of its magnetism and spiritual vigor, which singles it out as the initiatory center of the highest significance, the sect of the Illuminati, the illumined ones of Bavaria. Oh my. Founded in the 18th century by Adam Wostoff, who worked for the Rothschilds, the banksters, leader of the Illuminati, professor of canon law at Ingolstadt University. The Illuminati order based their beliefs on the Johannite Gospel, and this they differed from other Masonic lodges which accepted Jews as members. Thus the Illuminati indeed prefigured racism, or perhaps one might say better, segregation, before our own times. As in every secret society, the code of conduct was severe and left no room for individualism. Members greeted one another by placing their right hand across the eye. We've seen that. as if blinded by sunlight. The light and it follows with their name Illuminati. We should note here that sun worship of pagan origins distinguished the Illuminati from the other forms of Freemasonry, which are based on Christianity. The Illuminist lodges gave courses in what we would call today applied psychology, intended to sway the hostile or the recalcitrant. So they're using psychology to sway us. While the Illuminati order appears to have suffered a decline in 1790, it did not by any means disappear. There are numerous resurgences of the movement, one of the last occurring in 1912, as if by some strange turn of faith in Austria. That's where Hitler was born. It should be noted that Illuminism has always been more prevalent in that country, representing for its practitioners a bulwark against the exceedingly strong Jewish culture in that part of Europe. So the strong Jewish culture, as we all know, unite and work together and keep themselves separate from the communities where they reside, and work feverishly towards obtaining more wealth and power and control over populations. This is true of the Jewish cultures. And as they became more powerful and wealthy, how's that wind again? Is there a message in there for me? Just my sense of humor. As we know in my previous videos, and you can look it up for yourself, in 2,000 years, almost 100 different countries evicted the Jewish people after they had initially welcomed them. But with the interest rates they charged, and becoming the lenders and financiers and controllers of society and the tax collectors for the kings and queens and the powerful people, they would eventually wear out their welcome. And apparently, and as this book says, in many instances, to battle these people vying for power and wealth, the Jewish people throughout history, the other groups formed secret cults like the Illuminati to combat that. That's what they would have us believe. Illuminism inevitably paved the way for pan-Germanism. By reason, pan-Germanism means German expansionism, by reason of it being an autonomous offshoot of Freemasonry whose goals is subverted and perverted. So I probably don't disagree with that the Illuminati did manage to take over Freemasonry. And maybe initially it was an organization of skilled workers, masons, stonemasons, builders. Semitic race making its appearance about this time, it can properly be said that racist Gnosticism dates from this same period. All the tendencies were to come into full bloom after the 1914 in the famous Thule Society, which was the seminary for the neo-Gnostics group, racist groups, whose fundamental doctrine taught that good was Aryan and evil was Semitic. It was in this common ground that the neo-Manichaean philosophy, preached by the highest priests, Dietrich Eckhart, that all of the cults sprung from the Illuminati branch met, of which the best known are Hammer Union, by reference to the hammer of the god Thor in the Nordic mythology, and the Wandering Comrades. So all of these Masonic cults are derivatives from the Illuminati, who were taken over, of which the most secret of the Society of the Seekers of the Grail. So one of the most secret of the societies, these cults, is the Seekers of the Grail. earth-shaking role in the events of 1938, prior to World War II. It is no accident that the guiding principle of the Thule Society are identical or nearly so to those of the NSDAP, National Socialist Party. The mentor of the Thule Society, Dietrich Eckart, born March 23, 1868, died December 26, 1923, participated in Hitler's abortive push on March 9, 1923. So I guess we can say that this craziness going on in the world today is just a continuance of what has been going on. And again, it might behoove we the people to wake up to that. Not surprisingly, Adolf Hitler belonged to the sect, as did Alfred Rosenberg and many others. The Thule Society. The main purpose of the Thule Society, in the mind of its founders, was to constitute a rallying point for all the occult societies of like persuasion, and thereby to remerge with the ancient Germanic tradition. As the legend of the Thule, from which the sect borrowed its name, what has survived until our own times, through the German Lied, is the cult of the gold cup. Guess I'll have to look that one up. The use of the sacred cup in libations was peculiar to the Celtic Nordic people. We know from mythology that Iris, whose name means rainbow, used a gold cup to draw from the Styx the water used by the gods for their oaths. The ancients believed that the race of the bow, born of the rainbow, that is the Nordic or the Arctic race, was the first, the elite of the human races. Lest we forget, the rainbow is the symbol for the New Age and the gay agenda. The origins of the sacredness of the cup used in religious libations is explained in Plato's Timenius. Plato relates that the 10 gods of Atlantis began their gatherings by offering see how much further I gotta go here. Up a young bull whose blood was collected in a cup. Wow, so they were collecting the blood of the young bull in a cup. But this is only one hypothesis. There are others which stress the role of Buddhism, although not ruling out the first. However that may be, this concept, born in the West, had a long pre-generation in the East before finally coming back into the hands of the Celts, or more exactly, those of their priest, the Druids. If you don't take your time and study this, it could get confusing. All right, let's see if I can continue and finish this video. On the one hand, it represented the vessel of knowledge, and on the other, the cup of the pure blood. The Cathars, who had used it for mystico-religious purposes, hid it to keep it from being profaned during the persecutions of the 13th century. Wow, so this little debate of reality has been going on for a while, 13th century. The Catholics against the Cathars against the Jewish folks. But I suspect on a higher level, cosmic, that the controlling forces are the same. It also explains the keen interest of the German seekers of the Thule Society, of the fact that among various groups committed to the search was the Society of the Seekers of the Grail. The society counted among its members the brilliant Otto Rahn, who was to play the main role in the drama about to unfold. The Chateau Monsignor, whose white sarcophagus-like ruins stood out in stark relief against the emerald forest lying beyond. Otto Rahn, for this was the name of the young German, in love with the Cathar civilization. Montsegur, the Mount Tabor of the Catharai of Aquitaine. This would be a mountain resort here, a castle, on top of Mount Tabor, of the Catharai of Aquitaine, and the last refuge of the Albigensian heresy, the Cathars, is one of those high areas where the presence of the Spirit is undeniable. This monument, which was the object of religious cult during Neolithic times, has never ceased to attract the curious, and the Catholic Church sometimes later chose this very location for a chapel dedicated to Saint Bartholomew, whose feast is August 24th, thereby adopting to its own ends the meaning of the old pagan customs. There is also a tradition that the two ponds in the St. Bartholomew mountain mass, Trout Pond and Devil Pond, are enchanted spots. According to the lore of the region, throwing a single stone into either of them will unleash the wrath of heaven. Curiously, storms in this mountain region are both frequent and extremely violent. For those who relish encounters with the otherworldly, let us note that Druids, found everywhere in the Pyrenees at the time of the Celts, drew a magic circle at this spot, which was uninitiated, where the uninitiated were forbidden to cross. So this was a sacred spot to them. As it stands today, the chateau resembles a long stone chest, pentagonal in form, like a pentagon, to which it had been adjoined a rectangular dungeon. So it had an adjoining rectangular dungeon. Everything suggests that the edifice was built not for military ends, but rather according to a plan for sacred architecture. That Montsegur was in fact a temple dedicated to a cult, a holy site that was capable of putting up a fierce resistance in the event of an attack. So there was a book by Ferdinand Neil, proved that the layout of the edifice lends itself to the plotting with astonishing accuracy, the principal positions of the sun in its ascendancy, an ancient Menonitian temple consecrated to sun worship. Other castles in Aquitaine possess an architectural much like that of Montsegur. Henry Colty, who conducted extensive research in this subject in southwestern France, discovered important evidence confirming Ferdinand Neil's findings. He saw some 40-odd subterranean passageways dating back to the 11th and 12th centuries, and he found that all of the subterraneans have a chapel hall wherein is found a sort of altar. More of these are religious altars, like in Rabbi Marvin's books To Eliminate the Opaque, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Apparently in Hitler's diary, as I keep repeating, which I think it's noteworthy, is they abducted a Munich, Germany, a young man, a gypsy, sacrificed him on an altar, to bring forth an interdimensional being to impregnate a girl laying on an adjoining altar. Apparently, the being appeared in Hitler's diary, but the impregnation of the girl did not happen. So I guess they were trying to create some kind of super being or interdimensional being. Kind of concerning. For a given region, all the subterraneans are so oriented that they converge towards a single point. Kotel became convinced that they were not primary refuges, but rather temples where the Cathars, before the period of the persecutions, celebrated their initiation ceremonies. In 1931, Otto Rahn, of his work Crusade Against the Grail, which first appeared in Germany in 1933. But in 1931, the inhabitants of the little community of Montesigor were completely unaware of a signal honor bestowed upon them by a certain secret society, which was feverishly engaged in founding the Third Reich, Germany. Alfred Rosenbach, author of the notorious Myth of the 20th Century, of verifying the accuracy of the following hypothesis. Mont Sigor was indeed the Mont Salvet, or Mount of Salvation, of the Arthurian legend, and did hold somewhere within it the Holy Grail. Like I said, this is right out of like an Indiana Jones movie. The 11th and 12th centuries, Cathar missionary activity ranged as far east as Germany and was particularly active in Franconia, which explains the intense and enduring interest of the Germans in this kind of pseudo-religious thought. It should be noticed that Eckbert, rector of the Cathedral of Cologne, mentions in Rhenish Cathar celebrating a feast day in honor of their supreme initiator, Mani, hence Manichaean, sufficient proof that by this time the Cathar sect was already solidly established on the Teutonic soil. In his book, the young scholar situated the Grail at Montesigor and claimed that the Cathars were the last inheritors of the sacred object. But most important, he put forth the hypothesis that the Grail could be something quite different from the Emerald Cup of the Christian legend. A second work by Rahn appeared in Germany in 1936, which confirmed, if further proof was necessary, his talents as a historian and philosopher. In Lucifer's Court in Europe, the author adduces political data in further support of his theories concerning the Cathars. After his trip in 1937, Rahn went back to Germany and was never to return to Languedoc, the area of this castle. Rumor has it that in 1945 he was beheaded in a concentration camp. All right, so moving on here, page 15. To the total war being prepared by the Third Reich, the revelation to the white race of its true nature would have had as its corollary the transformation of Germany into a community of pure ones, or Cathar perfecti. That Rahn left the world which he no longer understood and which would soon rekindle with crematoria, phosphorus bombs, and the atomic cataclysm at Hiroshima, a Mount Sigor funeral pyre of global dimensions. So are all these things leading up to some global apocalypse event? Why the Grail? Why all this satanic rituals? Why? All we want to know is why. The Grail, myth or reality. The symbolic meaning most often associated with the Grail is that it was the chalice used by Jesus during the Last Supper. The chalice in which Joseph or Arimathea collected Christ's blood as it ran from the wound made in his side by the lance of the Roman centurion Longinus. From this alone, it would be apparent that the chalice is very often associated with the lance. As for the cup, we shall discuss its meaning to the ancients in subsequent chapters devoted to the great tradition. For now, let us simply say that the loss of the Grail, the sacred vessel of knowledge. Remember, the Freemasons, as I keep saying, in all of the different societies, whether it's the Illuminati, the York Rite, Scottish Rite, Rosicrucian, and all the other secret societies, Zionism and their plans, the Jesuits and their plans. That's why we have the black Jesuit Pope now. The Jesuits are the assassination arm or the enforcers of the Vatican. And the current Pope is a Jesuit, and they were it's called the Black Pope, if you're a Jesuit. It's like an opposite to the good Pope. So the other Pope stepped down and allowed the Jesuit Pope to step up, putting the assassins and enforcers in charge of the church. One wonders if they're not preparing for some kind of crazy battle. And why do you put the general, the leader of the Jesuits, in charge? Just saying. Then you got Benjamin Netanyahu in charge, apparently, in Israel. And he says he hates the United States and it's going to turn the country into a third world country after they destroy it and make us regretting not wanting to be their slaves. Look it up. In Fink's Bar, he said that. And then, of course, Prime Minister Sharon in Israel said, don't worry about the USA. We control the USA. So you got the Zionist Jewish folks saying they control the USA. We know the Illuminati and all the Masonic lodges control the USA. And the Catholic Church has a huge influence and controls the USA, as well as other countries in the world. So we can say these three different forces, from Rome, the Vatican, from Israel, the Zionist, and worldwide, the Masonic lodges of various types and names, and cults, organizations, including witchcraft, all that stuff. They control things, and they want to keep what they're doing and how they control us, that knowledge from us. Just wondering how many more pages I got to go here. What I'm going to get done on this video without making it too long. For those who believe in the unity of the great tradition, that is to say, the fundamental and transcendental unity of all religions, legends, and myriad mythologies, I suppose that would be me, that there's something all connecting these things. It seems clear that Christianity annexed the Grail myth, transforming it into the Emerald Cup, containing the blood of Christ, thereby changing altogether its original symbolic meaning. Well, we all know that about 300 years or so after Jesus died, the Catholic Church was losing its power and Christianity was growing. So what did Rome do? They embraced Christianity and forced their version of it on the world. And they had crusades and inquisitions and all kinds of nasties, including, when the conquistadors and troops came to Central America, North America, South America, massacring the American Indians in Central America and South America and Africa and much of the world. A lot of people died at the hands of these secret mystery school of Babylon characters and their cults. For those who believe in the unity of the great tradition, that's what I said, it seems clear that Christianity annexed the Grail myth. And moving on, such was the interpretation of the National Socialist, whose philosophy was based upon their seeing in the Grail stone a law of life valid only for certain races. In his book, King of the World, René Guénon did not go so far enough when he declared, "He who possesses wholly the primordial tradition, and who has attained a degree of perfect knowledge, which is implied in such possession, is by this fact reintegrated into the fullness of the primordial state." So when we went over the technique of the master, the Rosicrucians, and the aspirant or initiate had to depersonalize himself, give up all activity in this material world, and allow his mind to be clear and open in a perfect state, to allow some kind of self or master to work through him. So I suppose you could say that would be reintegrated into the fullness of the primordial state. The Grail is at once a vase and a religious book, a gradual. Was it a sacred vase, symbol of faith, or a secret book, symbol of lost knowledge? Only in the preface of Lewis Parwell's Morning of the Magicians, 1960, is the entire matter reopened. National Socialism is Genoism plus Panza divisions. So I suppose a lot of the actual citizens of Germany probably were not aware of all of this. Still, when one attempts to explain the phenomenon called National Socialism, one becomes aware of its quintessential characteristics are both simple and complex. The Grail is a sacred book of the Aryans, lost and found again to be finally hidden at Mont Singor by the Cathars who were unable to decipher it. The rest seems to be fairly obvious. It remained only for some modern specialist versed in the decipherment of pagan inscriptions to rediscover the Grail stone and to translate it into a clear language in order for the Aryan tradition not to be lost. The secret of the genesis of the world thus revealed to the Nazi masters. It would then be used to justify their political theories through the irrefutable proof of a millennium writing, in the sense of millennium, that which is military, melanin, corresponding to the flood, millennium, corresponding to the flood. It was under these auspices that Otto Rahn, eminent specialist in Catharism, was sent by the Nazi hierarchy into the Albigensian country of the Cathars to locate the famous Grail stone mentioned by Wolfram von Eschenbach's verse, notably in his Perziel, which is the poet speaking of a precious stone. The Manichaeans, the one who followed the prophet Mani, who were originally from Persia, and therefore Aryans. So we can say the Persians are the Iranians, and they are Aryans. Why does Israel hate Iran so much, and the Persians, and Germans? The concentration Grail, with the meaning precious engraved stone. So I'm just reading this stuff so we can get some more background information as to possibly what they got planned for World War III, and why and what the goals are. Moving on, page 18. The Nazi Minister of Culture was to say with some considerable emphasis, "Today there awakens a new faith, a myth of blood, the faith, too, for defending the blood, the divine essence of man." Oh my. When you read Rosenbach's new book, you will understand these things, for it is the most powerful work of its kind, greater even than H.S. Chamberlain's. Moving on, all mythologies proceed from its structuring principle. The knowledge of this principle is not in turn a mythology, rather it is the myth itself. It is life contemplated with veneration. The development of its hidden reality is the turning point of our time. In the light of such explanations, we can get to the very heart of the neo-Gnosticism, or, if one prefers, to the Manichaeism of the Nazi leaders and the intellectuals whose entire outlook was based on a racist Gnostic knowledge. Infusing all of these myths into the thought of the 20th century was to be the greatest preoccupations of the Nazis. And I might say, with the people who were in control of the United States, and don't forget those Masonic lodges are all over the United States, and all over Europe, and all over the world. So they are preoccupied with this cosmology religion. Thus, René Alou, a specialist in esoteric, in his last work, Hitler and the Secret Societies, used the term neo-Manichaeism and racist Gnostic without pushing his analysis further. Manichaeism, Nazi organizations, indeed in the Hitlerian cosmology, we find the tenuary classification characteristic of Gnostic groups. Gnostic means knowledge. The pure ones, the initiates, and the masses, one thinks immediately of the Cathari. At the top is the lordly caste, the elites. Next are the members of the party, and at the bottom are the great anonymous masses, just as it is now. The masses are oblivious to the members of the party that's being built right now, the administrative force like Jade Helm, secret societies, drones, FEMA camps. But at the top there are these lordy castes, people who think that they're gods. Just saying. The founding of an order which would be at once military and doctrinal, much like the Templars of the Middle Ages, was the abiding preoccupation of Hitler before 1939. The SS would be cast in the mold of the Black Order, the color of the pure ones and of the new Cathars. Here is the first stage of heroic youth. It is out of this that will come the second stage, that of free men, of men who is both compass and focus, of the world, of man creator, of man God. That's the teaching of the New Age. Here once more, the tri-level Gnostic hierarchism. This new Gnostic, through the Aryan knowledge concerning the beginnings, was in opposition to the Christian faith and to the Nazi faith of the Marxists. So I still believe that there's some higher caste that controls the Zionist groups, the Catholic Church leadership, not of course all we citizens, and all the Masonic lodges and all the different cults, and of course not all the lowly members who really don't know what the real plans are all about. They join these groups for business contacts and socializing, so they think. But then they have to swear under threat of death not to divulge the secrets, and told that they're better than the rest of us, and the rest of us that are not initiated are called the profane, cattle, animals not to be trusted, goyim, The emblem chosen by Hitler, the swastika, or gamma cross, takes on an esoteric meaning in the same mythology. The founder of the National Socialist Party wanted, through the universal symbol, to link up with all the religions and magics based on symbolism. In much the same way, the knightly orders, such as the Templars, were in their origins initiatory societies, their heretical devices being chosen by leaders who were versed in the occult. I'm thinking of George Bush in the Skull and Bones, lying in a sarcophagus or a tomb, naked, telling all his sexual secrets, and then later on, part of the ritual, wrestling with another guy naked in mud, and so much other crazy goings on by these people. Look up Alex Jones in the Bohemian Grove, the cremation of care, throwing a baby into a fire, dressing in long robes, bringing in gay men for some kind of satanic sex. Even in the Illuminati with the Pindar, sacrificing a human being, and these people metamorphosized back into some kind of reptilian beings, viciously attack the body that is bleeding and eating the flesh, is another one of these rituals. There does seem to be some kind of entities behind the scenes. Oh my. Alright, let me try to finish this video up so it's not too long. I can see I'm going to make a couple of videos on this book. Get the book. Let's give credit where credit is due. If it's even being published new now. I don't know. So, man God, man creator. Here once more, the tri-level Gnostic hierarchism. This new Gnostic, through the Aryan knowledge concerning the beginnings, was in opposition to the Christian faith and to the Nazient faith of the Marxist. The emblem chosen by Hitler, the swastika, or gamma cross, takes an esoteric meaning of this same mythology. The founder of the National Socialist Party wanted, through this universal symbol, to link up with all religious and magics based on symbolism. In much the same way, the knightly orders of the Templars, with their origins initiatory societies and their heraldic devices, being chosen by leaders who were versed in the occult. That was worth repeating twice. By re-establishing this practice, Hitler continued a tradition long hallowed by the Thule Society. The Grail, our chief concern, though its meaning bears a close relationship to the swastika. Mont Salvant, the mountain of the Grail, can be assimilated with the Paradisha of Sanskrit, meaning supreme region. It still has this meaning in Persia, the spiritual center, par excellence. As I keep saying, a lot of people are programmed these days to believe in nothing. Denying Jesus, denying God. And here we're reading this about Jesus and his blood and the lance, puncher in his side, getting the blood in a cup. Reminded of that pirate movie where Captain Barbossa says to the girl, when she enters the cabin and she's fighting with him, Pirates of the Caribbean, and he says, "So, Missy, you don't believe in ghosts?" And he pushes her out into the moonlight, and he steps out, and his flesh and blood body turns into a body of just bones. "So, Missy, you don't believe in ghosts?" And there he is, a walking bag of bones. So people need to start believing in something, I suggest, and believing that they do have the power of prayer, and they can pray for this stuff for God to conquer the Satanist. I don't think people want to live like in a Mad Max movie, Hunger Games movie, Divergent type movie, all these horrific things they put on TV and the movies. I think people need to make a decision about this and realize that it is a prophesized coming reality, which I don't think has to happen if people wake up. But I'm also aware that belief in God, and in my case, Jesus or whatever, does afford me some protection and probably an escape from what people who do not believe in God and try to follow the teachings of Jesus and other teachings that teach good and bad and choose the good side. Apathy and just trying to think that ignorance is bliss, I think, is very destructive. Being a ignorant and stupid person without any research or knowledge is probably not a good thing. But if you walk around on the city streets and go plenty places or hire employees, you're going to wonder about people. You're going to go, oh my gosh, don't these people think? Don't they care? Don't they take care of their children, their situation, their money? It's tough. You know, the early cultures in the legendary Hyperborea. So I'm learning as I read this stuff too. I find it fascinating. We are always dealing with a region which, like the earthly paradise, has become inaccessible to ordinary mortals, which is situated beyond the reach of the cataclysms which threw the human world into utter confusion at the end of a certain reoccurrent cycle. Rene Guénon, King of the World. Now the new religion finally could be assembled. The bloody myth of the esoteric tradition, the voices of the innumerable prophets, the swastika as a cognitive sign, all of the elements bathe in the music of Wagner. A purple swath rised up like that which heralds the morning sun. To the pulsations of the trumpet music, the west wave crest overflows, unfurls itself into a vast red carpet. As for the tables of the law, Hitler envied the Jewish people for them. Small wonder, then, his rage whenever he spoke of Moses and the Hebrews, who for centuries, in spite of all persecution, kept intact the Judaic tradition and the religion of their fathers. Well, I'm a bit perplexed and confused there. Didn't Moses, when he went up to the mountain to get the Ten Commandments, and he came back like he was white as a ghost, apparently interfacing with God, the Hebrews had gathered all the gold amongst themselves, created a image of a cow, a bull, and were worshiping it, which would be the pagan religion of worshiping Moloch, the demon god. Moses was so angry he smashed the tablets, punished the Hebrews, and had to go back up the mountain a second time to get a new set of tablets. Took 40 days and 40 nights. So anyways, Hebrews who for centuries, in spite of persecution, kept intact the Judaic tradition and the religion of their fathers. And then again, I'm thinking about the Talmud, their book that says they can have sex with 3-year-old children, and that they're not to help a injured non-Jew, let's say a Christian man, lying in a ditch. It would be a sin for them to help him. And if they borrow money from a non-Jew, they're not to pay it back. And all kinds of Talmudic things that are just horrible. So I'm not quite sure, in my opinion, I don't think the father of Jesus Our Father who art in heaven, as the Lord's Prayer goes. And Jesus, who spoke of his Father when in that world there were many mansions. I don't think that God, that Father, would be preaching to the Talmudic Jews to have sex with 3-year-old children, or abduct young boys, or girls, whatever, boys, puncture them with dozens of holes and let the blood leak out, and put all kinds of pinchers and painful devices on the body so the child would scream in pain and agony, not wanting to kill the child very quickly. It had to last a long time while they collected the blood and drank it for some kind of spiritual interface with the other realm or favors from the gods, whatever. It was horrible. I watched a video where some guy documented over the last 2,000 years the documented court cases where these people were caught doing this, these bad Jews, not to be confused with all Jews. Remember, some Jews split off into the Zionist world, and if you look up Zionism and images, you will clearly see a lot of Jews are saying Judaism is not Zionism. And as I said before, if you look up Henry Makow, M-A-K-O-W, a Jewish PhD author in Canada who wrote the book Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World, and of course Rabbi Marvin Antelman, and to eliminate the opaque people believing in God. Obviously, a lot of Jews with knowledge have not went over to the dark side and have been trying to warn the rest of us. Is where I got a lot of my knowledge. So I join the anti-Zionist Jewish folks in their effort to expose the goings-on to the world. So if I'm anti-anything, I'm anti-satanic, Luciferian, secret goings-on in lodges with the threat of death if they tell us the truth. I'm against that. I suspect a lot of people would be if they learned about it. What a victory in the eyes of the entire world, the possession of the Grail by Adolf Hitler. What a vengeance at the same time on the eternal enemy. He alone would then appear as the Führer, the Messiah of the eternal religion, the theocratical head of the new Europe with Germany as its center and principal beneficiary of absolute knowledge, since the white race would renew its eternal becoming. So in eternal religion, we know that the current Jesuit Pope, Francis, sent a video you can watch on YouTube to all the other leaders of all the other churches saying that we should reunite because now there's no reason for us to be separated. So I'm wondering, what's he talking about? A one world religion, which he said. A one world currency, which he said. Obama says it. Bush says it. Kissinger says it. All of them say it. The people who run the country and the world. You got people like Ted Turner, Bill Gates, saying the planet is overpopulated and they need to reduce the population. So I just think the rest of us ought to wake up. With that, I'll end this video. I hope it's been an interesting conversation. I've got more to go. The point is, when I do discuss these issues and I talk about the occult, and I talk about the one world order and the one world religion and who's fighting who, it just might behoove we the people to investigate. Don't believe everything I say, of course. Get a little notepad, take some notes, look up what I talk about, and collect your own research. And if enough of us do it and convince our friends and neighbors of the goings-on, you know, we could possibly avoid World War III and a mass depopulation murder. 6 billion people, maybe, according to the Georgia USA Guidestones. They want a population on the planet of 500 million worldwide. Knowing full well these reptilian characters, these elitists who think that they are royal and divine, will control the world after they kill off 90% of the population. And everybody else they can control. I think that's one of their biggest problems now. There's too many people for them to control if the word got out about the truth. So they need to reduce the population. They need to keep a population. They want the humans. Sex slaves, worker slaves, workers, entertainment, sacrifices, food. So they need the humans on the planet. It seems to be some kind of foundation for their survival and what they thrive on. And least we not forget, Einstein, whoever said that, there are two types of people. Those who prey upon people and those who get preyed upon. The wolf and the lamb, or the sheep. And these predators, these people who are evil, predators who are sacrificing people, and maybe not even of all human DNA, maybe some kind of reptilian DNA, going along with the Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law and his description and drawing of Hiawas, the gray alien-looking creature he was in contact with. And of course, saying that there's only one law, do whatever you want. So, and then the gray alien abduction stories and the descriptions of human-like aliens, tall, blonde aliens, apparently in Shambhala in the Tibetan mountains, and reptilian-type entities, aliens described by many people, interfacing with UFOs and aliens, like in Dulce Base in North Carolina and other bases all over the world. What is the truth? What is really going on? And should it behoove us to wake up and check it out? I think so. Thank you for watching my video, Rick Mariko reporting.